How's it going, hey? Eddie Durkan here. You're very welcome to the Hardy Book, Episode 1, Season 1, Prelude to the book. I wrote down a couple of old stories there for you, just so you could enjoy listening to my cool voice, going, wow, he's class. Who is he? Heard he's from Castletown, man. Where's that, you might ask? Sure, it's there between Tubbacurry, Charlottetown, Castlebar and Ballina. Ballina, as it said down the States. Listen up here and now, fucko, because I'm about to read you this book that I started writing. And you better like it, man. Share it to your friends. You might be listening to this while you're in the cot, half asleep, going, cool, cluckety-cloo, Clark, cool. And I'd be like, throw a bit of fucking wedge behind that lead. Books don't grow on trees, but technically they do. Because, like, trees, you know, you cut them down, you mash them up with a bit of water and, you know, turn them into fucking pages then that the books are written on. But, you know, I'm going on a tangent here now, and that's something you better get used to. Even in the book, I had to go off on tangents. So without further ado, wrap your lugs around this now. Hardy Book. The Hardy Book. The Hardy Book talking. Hardy Book. I'm talking awful shite, man, I'm sorry. So here we go, hey. The Hardy Book. Preface. How's it going, hey? Are you keeping well? Come here and allow me to introduce myself. My name is Eddie Durkan, and I want to welcome you to my first contribution to Irish literature. I fairly enjoyed English class in school, but when I realised half of the books we read were written by Irishmen, I thought, what the fuck? I can do that too. Funnily enough, this brings to mind an old teacher of mine named Mrs. Cha-Cha. I ran into her recently after a bit of chat, and I apologised for my rowdy behaviour back in the day. Like the time I burnt Matty Gibbons' hair off the back of his head with a can of Lynx Africa deodorant and a clipper lighter. He went up like a fucking torch, man. The smell of burnt hair made me want to gack. Matty went home that day with his polyester school jumper welded to his back. Sure, it was only a shot of horseplay, hey. But I went just a smidge too far. When I met Mrs. Cha-Cha in the petrol station, I shouted, come here, Cha-Cha, hey. Sorry if I was a bellend in school. I had problems at home. The old lady wouldn't let me play Mortal Kombat 3 on the Mega Drive until I did the hoovering. Hard times, man! What kind of shite you waffling now, Eddie, she said. She'd always had it in you. Trouble was getting you to put pen to paper. You were a lazy bollocks with a good heart. Just get a bit of cop on and you'd be grand. As I was picking up an 8-pack of Carpacky lager, I replied, fair play on the pep talk. I'll do you a fat solid. Talk to you later, yeah? Then I did a Christian and bailed. Well, missus, look at me now, G-Unit. I'm finally doing it, and in style too. I hope she and all your ma-fuckers enjoy this compilation of Castletown folklore. Don't know why I'm talking like a street blood from the hood in LA, but it's just my way. It's the way my beautiful mind works. Russell Crowe job. I heard Russell Crowe once bit a chunk out of a soft lad's neck at some award ceremony because he wouldn't let him read out a poem. That lad's on monkey chats or fucking weed spliffs. He wouldn't be half as lively down in the Ballina pool hall. Ha ha. He'd get a clock to the jaw. Rapid. Irish word ponces. There's some serious heavyweights have gone before me. Sure, they say Ireland is the land of saints and scholars. I claim to be neither of the above. I'm just a run-of-the-mill header from East Mayo. That's the way I like it. There'd be a lot of academic softcocks up in Dublin who never had to throw a slap in their lives. They wouldn't like my hard talk much. The cunts. If they ever came round here, I'd give them a punishment bumming. Man or woman, doesn't matter how. Relax, the cax. It's a figure of speech. I'm no Jeffrey Weinstein, man. It's time to rub shoulders with the big knobs. Singe, Kavanagh, Wilde, Mayfucking, Binchy, man. And how could I forget the legend of John B. Keane? A cosy old bastard. Oh, he loved the sauce so much he even had his own pub. And I tell you this, he was his own best customer. And that's gospel, according to Keith Duffy. The man revelled in the creamiest of dark pints, and in his own words exclaimed, "No man was ever born into this world with such a passion and a love for liquor as myself. It isn't just that I love the liquor for the taste of it. I love the plop of whiskey as it falls into the glass. I love to listen to it. I love the cream on a pint, and that first violent explosion as it hits the mark below. Hats off to you there, Johnny Cakes. Spoken like a true sauce monster. I'd confidently contest that on any given dole day, at least 40 men could be found in any of Castletown's pubs that would have drank him under the table, and that's word. The place is riddled in champion piss artists, hard lads who treat their livers like a pair of slip-on shoes from River Ireland. Rishi job. But in fairness to Keane though, hey, his spellbinding devotion to the lush was nothing short of iconic. Hard drinking aside, his ability to distill the essence of rural Irish life with such incredible nuance is what made his work remarkable. The chat between townsfolk, back-talking cowardice and hypocrisy, the fear they had for Keane's ultimate hardy buck, Bull McCabe, a bearded hard man found in Keane's play The Field, also played by Richard Harris, another man from Limerick who absolutely lived for the pints. Himself, Ollie Reid and fucking Richard Burton and the boys would be knocking around pubs in Wimbledon doing the 20 pubs of Christmas or some shite. Peter O'Toole was another man for the hard sessions. All good lads, not like these soft boys of Hollywood today doing old carb diets and facials and shit. Those lads had a face like a leather chamois from just drinking out in the sun all day and knocking about, living life. But back to McCabe. He was one of those old boys who had fuck all to do, other than work the land with his son. They were a pair of weather-beaten tough guys who loved bare-knuckle fighting and graft. At one point, McCabe talks of himself and his son Tig flaking a donkey to death with their own calloused hands. A 45-minute father-son tag-team combo, working in shifts to dispatch the poor old donkey, who would remain faithful until the end. It's a bit like when America used Saddam Hussein in the war against Iran, only to take him out then a couple of years later for the crack. That old donkey, he was a waste of skin in the eyes of McCabe. He'd served his purpose and then slowed down progress in his rich clover-strewn field. He had a pure boner for the land, that lad, man. It was weird. He reclaimed the land over the course of 5 years before being forced to sell it on to an English lad in an auction. Himself and the son dodged him in one night. Doish! Throwing slaps at him like a fucking combine harvester, working over the grain. Hard country bucks. Grand when they're left to their own devices. Happy enough without the woman's touch. There's hundreds of men like McCabe knocking round in the West. They hate to see lads having a handy time of it and take it upon themselves to belittle anyone who doesn't like Mike Denver and ploughing. I'm not even on about shagging. Proper tractors and furrows and all that kind of stuff. You'd hear them down the town laughing at lads coming home from abroad. Trendy boys in fancy clothes. Look at the fists on that clown. Soft hands on him, like a tub of Philadelphia. Wouldn't do a right day's work in his life. Do you hear this, do you? He's a music producer now. Well, here's a song for you. Rev up and fuck off. There's thousands of Irish writers working today, and they all have their tales. This is mine, and I want to show you the world as I see it. Most old Irish books are out of touch with mod cons. They didn't even have smartphones or skateboards back then. Fucking boring, man. There was no ringing the Chinese takeaway on a Tuesday night and getting an MSG spice bag delivered to your gaff. Couple of crispy duck pancakes job. Sure, we're living in the future now, but Castletown kind of looks like the 60s, apart from Dyson hand dryers in the pub toilet. But still, I have the present day on my side, and I don't have to piss about with rickety old typewriters, worrying about typos and ink ribbons and all that shite. If I did, I would have knocked this shit on the head a long time ago. I'm writing this on an old Toshiba laptop I bought off a Chinese lad in a dodgy phone shop in Castlebar. As prolific as he was, Joyce didn't have a laptop, did he? That's just as well. He wouldn't have got any work done. Instead of writing Ulysses, he'd be off creeping around Facebook before heading on to YouPorn and manically pulling the plums off himself. And he wouldn't even have to worry about getting those daft little glasses steamed up either, because he'd be wearing contact lenses. All that random shit said now, I laid down the gauntlet with great honour. Like a pilgrim, stood at the foot of Croagh Patrick. I reached the rocky peak and enjoy the view of sweet success. As I type these words, I'm armed only with the essentials. A packet of amber leaf, 12 cans of Stella, aka Nelson's, as in Nelson Mandela's, Stella's. A multi-pack of pickled onion Monster Munch, and a half ounce of Squidgy Black. I will fight procrastination and self-doubt to the death while undertaking the writing of this book to the best of my ability. I owe it to myself, to you, the reader, and the following headers, whose epically monged out stories would have faded into the mists of time had I not committed the fingers to the keyboard. So buckle yourself up and lay on. This skyline's gonna take you to the Mazoon and back. Hardy Book. Chapter 1. Hypothetical Criticism. So yeah, I've kicked myself in the teeth a good few times over the years, either because of my own messy carry-on or relying on the wrong lads. As in the lads like, the boys, also known as the boys, my mates. We have lived the fast life, fast and loose, like Polish hardmen working on building sites in Indochina. The uncle once told me, a rolling stone will gather no moss, and that I should get a job up the supermarket and buy a site for a house. I said, cheers lad, but I want to be a big shot and play football with Michael Owen and the boys for Liverpool Football Club. Well, since that, I've had solid times, mediocre times, and 2 bottles of whiskey and jump in the fucking river times. I've had to pay the piper, and I'm late with the rent. Tell you this, man, I'll do a runner on the piper and say, oh, I'll have your rent, man. Then just fuck off in the heat of the night, leaving the dirty old dishes in the sink with a few crusts of Goodfellas deep pan pizza lying on the counter with some empty cans of Bav. Take that, piper, and shut up your hole, good lad. If you come near me, I'll bum you senseless, and I'm not even gay, man. Tell you this, I'm a one-man hurricane who's dossed breezily through adolescence and adult life with a devil-may-care attitude. What about it, man? Things haven't always panned out the way I planned. Self-sabotage, broken hearts and bouts of low self-esteem have stood in the way of me reaching my goals. Conversely, I've also tasted the sweetest victory. Writing this book has forced me to ask some serious questions about my own behaviour and my life path so far, to put myself under a microscope and dissect the highs and the lows. I'm a wild yet sound headcase, forever chasing the big fun in a world of limitations. Often, I end up not only pissing on my own bonfire, but the bonfire of others. But that said, I'm always there to offer my friendly king-size claw, giving a shotteen of advice to needy pricks in hard times. Like when Cowboy Lavin didn't have car insurance, and I said, fuck that insurance crack, man. It's only an old money racket. He hasn't had a stitch of insurance since 2001. Proper job, man. Proper job. Didn't stop me from getting insurance. I wouldn't be able to stick listen to the old lady going on about it. In fairness though, it is an absolute rip-off, especially since dodgy boys up in Dublin to be staging crashes and claiming whiplash, looking for soft claw wedge. So this booking I'm writing is a compendium of dream chat. The first serious bit of writing work I've done since walking out of the school gates back in 2000, slinging the bag over the shoulder saying, good luck school, I'll do whatever I like from now on. Time to get trials for LFC, and if not those boys, Sligo Town. I never did get those trials. The letter probably got lost in the post. Despite me putting my heart and soul into this publication, a part of me is bracing myself to hear my efforts panned by hypothetical shadowy bad boys, the kind of smug pricks thriving off intrigue and badness, always lurking on the street corners of my mind. But I envisage a different kind of bad boy as I take this intrepid step out of the town square and into the arena of high society. My thoughts drift towards images of stiff-necked spoff monocles up in Dublin. You know the type. Book critics. Spoofers in cushy media jobs, working for lofty broadsheet newspapers. Kind of lads you'd see on a mild Saturday afternoon in late September, contently be seated outside some sort of posh gastropub in Donnybrook, reading a neatly folded copy of the Financial Times, basking like an old crocodile in the golden sun. Take a look at him there in your mind, as slight impatience sets in while he waits for an attractive waitress to come and take his order. She lands up to him, pen and paper in hand, waiting for him to order some fancy shite. How ya? I'll have the oat latte, chicken pesto focaccia on gluten-free bread. Cheers, fair play to ya. After consuming his bespoke luncheon, he cruises off into Brown Thomas on Grafton Street to purchase some fresh, nautical light blue shirts by Gant, accompanied by a rustic pair of tan decking shoes. You know the ones with those little leather laces that go around the edge. Laces that don't actually serve any other purpose than being a decorative feature. After a languid stroll through the retail district, smiling coolly, he checks his Breitling watch. It's time to return home. Speeding down Lower Bagot Street in his top-down metallic blue 1980s BMW M3 Cabriolet, mint condition, chrome trim reflecting the sights of the city. He listens to the latest debate on Saturday with Cormac O'Heirdre on RTE Radio 1. He's looking forward to the evening ahead. Reassured expression further accentuated by a pair of those fancy purple-tinted sunglasses. You know the ones Colm Meaney, Johnny Depp and Val Kilmer wear on red carpets. In Beverly Hills, 90210. Job. Imagine him there. Get a good mental picture of this hypothetical book critic in your brain box. Just look at him. Wrapped up, smug as a bug in a rug, all cozied up in a sweet goose feather duvet of self-satisfaction. Later on, he arrives back to his fancy, freshly pointed red brick terraced house in Ranelagh, D6. He's preparing a dinner party with close friends. They just so happen to be esteemed luminaries of Dublin's intellectual and cultural scene. He dons his leather apron from a hook on the wall before pulling out a Bengston Woodworks chopping board. He begins scoring the skin of a large leg of lamb that is to be seasoned with fresh rosemary sprigs, cracked sea salt and black pepper. Slow roasted in a British racing green Aga stove, served with sautéed potatoes, al dente seasonal veg, with a side of basil mozzarella and vine tomatoes, alla balsamico, extra virgin olive oil, the works. He knows all too well the compliments will be rolling in thick and fast, serving to further bolster his self-esteem. Hey, to be fair, I'm starting to admire this dude. He knows how to live, in fairness to him. Come to think of it, he seems to have his shit together. A lot more than I fucking do. Oh man, don't even get me started on dessert, hey. I'm really getting hungry now, just thinking about it. Maybe you should go off and grab yourself something to eat before continuing on. Go on, leave the book down for a sec. Have a munch for yourself. But don't do what I do. Leave the book down and never come back, because you got distracted. Welcome back if you got yourself a bit of nosh. Fair play to you. Top job. Now, where was I? Oh yeah. Can you imagine the conceited banter there between himself and his guests, perched like crows on an antenna, gathered around an old oak dinner table, the finest French Beaujolais red wines from Morton's supermarket on Dunville Avenue. After dinner and the foreseen culinary acclaim, conversation turns to other topics, with each guest outdoing each other's talk of sending their kids to posh private schools like Gonzago's. One couple recants tales from their recent trip to Buenos Aires. A pink-faced, rotund man announces he's been off to see Ireland's bid to win the Six Nations corporate box. with that Irish Times lad who's always talking shop about Rugger, Terry Thornburg, or whatever the fuck his name is. I'll tell you one thing, that lad looks like he enjoys pints, and the chonkiest of Peruvian flake. Shortly after paying brief lip service to rugby chat, the subject turns towards recent books they've enjoyed. It's at that point my book enters the realm of conversation. "Oh my God, I've a great one for you. Wait till I tell you about the Hardy book. You're going to love this. It's beyond insane." They all laugh manically at my expense, the cunts. So much so, they've even neglected to notice that one of the dinner guests has a noticeably large chunk of green debris caught between her front incisors. Ha ha ha! They love it. Getting steamed, flirting with each other's wives. Probably throw the fucking keys in the ashtray then, and say nothing about it the next day. But here, hey, I leave that up to your minds to take that one further. The night has gone swimmingly, as to be expected, as they now finish up bidding each other farewell. The kitchen cleaned. It's time to retire to the boudoir. Off the critic goes now to climb the wooden hill, for tomorrow is a new day. Next morning, after a good night's kip, our expert book judge has been tasked to read my book. He's put it on the long finger for quite a while now, due to a pure lack of interest. Reluctantly, he chooses Sunday to consume it for critiquing purposes. Mildly hungover, feeling somewhat fragile, he dives right in, converting the text into mental imagery in the slideshow of his mind. He's just after stepping in to a world of absolute headers, rocked like a dinghy in a hurricane. The mental equivalent of getting shot in the gooch being the perineum, the bit of skin there between your balls and ass. Shot to the gooch, you're to blame. You gave my book a bad name. Or a good kick up the hole, as they'd say around the town. A kick up the hole is something our lads used to do back in the day, before the EU told them they couldn't hit kids anymore. It's not long now until our critic gets unnerved by the cocktail of testosterone-driven hard talk and testimonies of small-town whack jobs. Chased down then with a shot of rural machismo, he crinkles up his boat race as his brain struggles to absorb the inconceivable accounts of life around Castletown. He becomes agitated, as if hassled by wasps at a theme park. He's had enough. Now totally off his game, hapless and deeply flustered, he can't handle it, so he decides to drive his retro cabriolet out to Dunleary Harbour in a bid to find solace. Breathing deeply at the sea wall, he inhales the fresh salty breeze. Despite his best efforts to ground himself in the scenery, he remains flustered. So flustered, in fact, upon his journey home, his expensive, cream-coloured J. Lindbergh Fedora hat is unexpectedly whipped off his head by a raw gust of playful wind. Swept then onto the surface of the N11, rendered forsaken, he frantically scans his rear-view mirror, searching for his ill-fated headpiece. The sentimental stakes are too high. He must go back to retrieve it. That Fedora had been purchased in Stockholm while holidaying with his family. It's been everywhere with him in recent years. Warm memories of the hat flash before his eyes. Beloved people he's been with during memorable occasions and iconic places visiting while wearing said hat. Everything just swells around his imagination in one go. He's watching the mirror vigilantly, contemplating the safest stretch of road to pull into. Throwing caution to the wind, he steps out of the car and jumps onto the road. Waiting for a gap between the traffic, he feels foolish, self-conscious, as cars beep and swerve to avoid him. But alas, to his dismay, he watches it vanish. Swept under the shadow of the city centre-bound Dublin Ghost Bus. A novelty, spooky tour bus, doing laps of the city, putting the shits up students and feckless Yanks alike. Perched like a sparrow, half on the footpath, half on the road, a cyclist nearly hits him. "Watch where you're going, you dopey fat fuck." "I'm sorry, my hat." "Fuck your hat, man." His prize fedora has now been mashed mercilessly under the rear wheels, tossed lifelessly back into the gutter like a ruinous frisbee. "No, my favourite hat," he exclaims. The driver just keeps on rolling, baby. Freddie Durst job. Limp Bizkit style. It can be restored. There's hope yet, he thinks to himself, as he prepares once again to brave the traffic. Oh, the humanity! Further dismay follows, as the hat is airborne once again, volleyed by a Volkswagen Passat, and then cast into the wheel arch of a passing Garda van. Now blackened with dirt, it makes a good half a dozen rotations before being spat out. Maunched beyond repair, he picks it up with his trembling hands. A once pristine fashion ensemble now serves as a cold reminder of the fragility of circumstance. It is at this point our critic concedes the day is an utter washout. Back at his rustic dwelling, he decides to finish reading the hardy book with a new perspective, gleaning new insights into model rural living. Putting things into his cheese box, he thinks differently. It reminds him of his relative fortune in comparison. He counts his blessings, his house, wife and kids, a regular income, empathetically reading about the daftest of shite myself and the boys have endured over the years. Men in their prime, trapped like caged tigers, looking to escape the daily grind of small-town tedium in search of the big fun.